In the hush of a snowy Fifth Avenue night, a powerful CEO walked alone with her loyal German Shepherd, until the dog suddenly tensed, ears pricked, pulling her toward a trembling shadow in the storm. There stood a tiny girl, whispering words that would shatter walls. "My dad won't wake up." What happens when one frozen moment, one brave child, and one faithful dog change 3 lives forever? Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And if this story touches your heart, please subscribe for more. Snow fell softly on Fifth Avenue that night, each flake catching the glow of street lamps like quiet promises in the dark. The city moved slower under winter's weight, footsteps muffled, breaths visible in the cold air. Victoria Reed walked alone, as she often did when the hours grew late and the office lights no longer held her. At 35, she carried the quiet authority of someone who had built an empire from concrete and ambition. Her black trench coat reached her knees, cashmere soft against the chill. Beneath it, a white blouse and straight black trousers spoke of days that never quite ended. Long black hair tied back neatly, fair skin pale in the lamplight, she moved with the measured stride of a woman who had learned to keep everything at arm's length. The weight of decisions, deals closed in boardrooms, had settled into her bones. Yet tonight, like many nights, she walked to remember she was still alive beyond the numbers on a screen. Bruno padded beside her, the German Shepherd's black and tan coat dusted with fresh snow. At 4 or 5 years old, he was large and steady, muscles rolling under fur that spoke of strength held in reserve. His intelligent eyes scanned the shadows, ears forward, always alert to the world. Victoria sometimes forgot to notice. The leash in her gloved hand felt like the only tether she still allowed herself. He had been with her through long nights and longer silences, never asking for more than a walk and a place by her feet. Then Bruno changed. His body tensed, ears pricked, a low rumble deep in his chest. He pulled gently at first, then with purpose, drawing her toward a shadowed corner near a shuttered storefront. A soft whine escaped him, not of fear, but of something deeper, recognition perhaps of pain carried on the wind. Victoria followed without question, the snow crunching under her low heels. In the dim circle of light stood a small figure, a 4-year-old girl, golden curls escaping a white knit hat, her light pink puffy coat zipped high against the cold. Eliana Thompson looked up, blue eyes wide with the kind of fear that makes the world too big. Her cheeks were flushed, lips trembling. She whispered, almost too soft to hear, "My dad, he won't wake up." The words landed like stones in still water. Victoria knelt slowly, the damp sidewalk seeping through her trousers. She saw the child's mittens, red and small, clutching the edges of her coat as if holding herself together. Before Victoria could speak, Bruno lowered himself to the ground, belly to the snow, and pressed his broad head gently against the girl's leg. Eliana froze for a heartbeat, then reached out, fingers sinking into the thick fur at his neck. A small sigh escaped her, the first release of terror. Bruno stayed still, warm breath clouding the air between them, his body a shield against the night. In that moment, something shifted inside Victoria. Not a dramatic crack, but a quiet loosening, like ice giving way under spring sun. She had spent years building walls of glass and steel, convincing herself that distance was safety. Yet here was this child, trusting a stranger's dog before the stranger herself. And Bruno, faithful, wordless, had already chosen. Victoria felt the old ache stir, the one she had buried under schedules and success, the memory of her own mother, gone too soon, leaving behind a girl who learned early that love could vanish. She had promised herself never to need anyone again. But promises, she realized, could be heavy things to carry alone. Eliana looked up at Victoria, eyes searching. "Will you help?" The voice was small but steady now, anchored by the steady warmth of Bruno's presence. Victoria nodded, voice low and sure. "Yes, show me where he is." The child took Victoria's hand, cold fingers in a warm glove, and Bruno rose, shaking snow from his coat. He walked between them, leash slack, as if he understood the path ahead better than either of them. The snow continued to fall, soft and unhurried, covering the tracks they left behind. For the first time in years, Victoria felt the weight of another life touching hers, and it did not frighten her. It felt, strangely, like coming home. The narrow brownstone stairs creaked under their steps, old wood breathing the scent of years and quiet endurance. Snow melted from their boots, leaving dark prints on the worn runner. The hallway light flickered once, then steadied, casting long shadows on peeling wallpaper. Eliana led the way, small hand still in Victoria's, Bruno walking close enough that his shoulder brushed the girl's leg with every step. The apartment door was plain, painted a faded green, the number 3B barely visible. Eliana turned the key with both hands, the lock giving a soft click like a sigh of relief. Inside, the space was small but cared for. Children's drawings taped to the wall, a tiny Christmas tree in the corner with handmade ornaments of paper and string. The air smelled faintly of coffee gone cold and something sweeter, like vanilla from a candle long extinguished. On the floor beside the couch lay Noah Thompson, 31, stretched out as if sleep had claimed him suddenly. His short brown hair was damp with sweat, face pale, lips parted. No beard, just the shadow of stubble from too many long shifts. He wore a thin gray sweater and jeans, the clothes of a man who had come home exhausted and never made it to bed. A single empty water glass sat nearby, tipped on its side. Bruno moved first. He crossed the room in 3 quiet strides, lowered his head, and sniffed along Noah's chest. A low, urgent whine rose in his throat, then a short, sharp bark, clear, insistent. He nudged Noah's shoulder gently with his nose, once, twice, checking for breath. The man's chest rose faintly, shallow but steady. Satisfied, Bruno settled beside him, pressing the full length of his warm body against Noah's side, head resting near the man's ear, as if to share his own steady heartbeat. The dog's eyes never left Victoria, calm now, watchful. Eliana watched from the doorway, small fists clenched. "He always knows," she whispered. "Bruno always knows when something's wrong." Victoria felt the room close in, the faint hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of a wall clock, the warmth Bruno offered so freely. She knelt by Noah, fingers finding his wrist. The pulse was there, weak but persistent, like a distant drum. Her own heart raced in a way it hadn't in years, not from fear exactly, but from the sudden weight of responsibility. She had spent her life fixing problems with contracts and capital. This was different. This was flesh and breath, fragile and immediate. She pulled out her phone, dialed 911, voice steady as she gave the address, described the situation. Unconscious man, possible diabetic emergency, child, present. The dispatcher spoke calmly. Help was coming. Victoria hung up and looked at Eliana. The girl had crossed to Bruno, buried her face in his fur. The dog stayed still, letting her cling, one large paw draped protectively over her small foot. In the waiting silence, Victoria sat on the edge of the couch. Memories stirred unbidden. The hospital room years ago, her mother's hand growing cooler in hers, the machines beeping their final rhythm. She had walked away from that room, promising never to let anyone close enough to hurt like that again. Yet here she was, in a stranger's home, watching a child hold on to a dog as if it were the only solid thing left in the world. Bruno lifted his head, met her gaze. His eyes were deep, steady, without judgment. In them, Victoria saw something she had almost forgotten, trust given without condition. It pierced her quietly, like light through a cracked window. She reached out, rested a hand on Bruno's back. The fur was warm, the rise and fall of his breathing even. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to feel the ache, not as weakness, but as proof she was still capable of caring. Sirens grew in the distance, faint at first, then closer. Eliana lifted her head, eyes wide, but no longer terrified. "They're coming," she said, small voice steady. Victoria nodded. She looked at Noah, at the man who had worked himself to this edge for his daughter, and felt a quiet promise form inside her. Not grand, not spoken aloud, but real. Whatever came next, she would not walk away. Not this time. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead in the emergency room waiting area, pale and steady, like a heartbeat that refused to falter. The air carried the faint scent of antiseptic and coffee left too long on the warmer. Outside, snow still fell against the windows, softening the city's edges. The doctor emerged after what felt like hours, white coat creased, voice quiet but kind. Noah would live. Diabetic shock, compounded by exhaustion and fever, but caught in time. The little girl's courage and the dog's quick instincts had made the difference. Victoria sat on a hard plastic chair, Bruno at her feet, his head resting on her shoe. Eliana curled in her lap, small body finally still after the rush of the ambulance ride. The child's breathing matched Bruno's, slow, even, trusting. Victoria felt the warmth of the girl against her chest, a weight both strange and familiar. She had not held anyone like this in decades. The memory of her mother's last days surfaced unbidden, the thin hand slipping from hers, the room growing colder even as the machines kept going. She had walked out of that hospital promising herself safety in solitude. Now, here was this child, small and fierce, teaching her that safety could sometimes mean letting go. A social worker approached, a woman in her late 50s named Mrs. Ellis. Gray hair pulled into a neat bun, eyes tired but gentle. She carried a clipboard, spoke softly about protocols. No other family, no immediate options. Temporary foster care was the next step. Eliana heard the words and stiffened. Her fingers tightened in Bruno's fur. Victoria felt the shift before she saw it. The girl's breathing quickened, tears welling fast. She slid from Victoria's lap, dropped to her knees, and wrapped both arms around Bruno's neck. "Don't let them take me, Bruno," she whispered, voice breaking. "I'm scared, please." Bruno let out a low, soft whine, almost a sigh. He turned his head, licked the tears from her cheek with careful tenderness, then lifted his gaze to Victoria. Those deep eyes held no demand, only a quiet plea, steady and sure. The moment stretched. Victoria's throat tightened. She had spent years building walls to keep pain at bay. Deals, deadlines, distance. But this child's fear, this dog's unwavering loyalty, cracked something open. Tears came without warning, hot and silent. She knelt beside them, arms encircling both the girl and the dog. Bruno stayed still, letting her hold them. "I won't let them take you," Victoria whispered, voice rough with emotion. "Not you. Not either of you." The words carried a promise she had not known she could make. Eliana looked up, eyes searching, then leaned into her. Bruno exhaled, a long, contented breath that filled the space between them. Mrs. Ellis watched quietly. She saw the child calm as Eliana began to speak. Small stories of her father's songs, Bruno's tricks, the way the three of them had found each other in the snow. The social worker's expression softened. Exceptions were rare, but this night had already bent the rules. She made a call, spoke in low tones. When she returned, she nodded. Temporary guardianship, pending checks and visits. Victoria could take the child home, with the dog, of course. It was irregular, but it was right. Victoria stood slowly, Eliana's hand in hers, Bruno rising to follow. The hallway lights cast long shadows, but they no longer felt cold. She looked down at the girl, at the dog who had asked nothing and given everything, and felt a quiet certainty settle in her chest. She had spent too long running from connection. Tonight she chose to stay. The penthouse stood high above the city, its wide windows framing the snow-dusted skyline like a silent promise of distance. Inside, the rooms were clean and spare. White walls, gray furniture, the faint scent of polished wood and leather. Light poured in soft and cold, turning everything to silver. Victoria brought Eliana home that first night, carrying the small backpack, Bruno walking ahead as if he knew the way. The child paused in the doorway, eyes wide at the vast space. She looked small against the marble floors. Bruno circled once, then settled near the couch, tail thumping gently. Victoria showed Eliana the guest room, large bed, crisp sheets, too much emptiness. The girl climbed in without complaint, but her fingers twisted the blanket. When Victoria turned to leave, Eliana whispered, "Stay a little." Victoria sat on the edge of the bed. Bruno jumped up quietly, lay at the foot, and rested his head near Eliana's feet. The dog's breathing filled the silence, steady as a lullaby. Eliana reached out, touched Bruno's ear, and soon her own breathing matched his. Victoria watched them, the girl's small hand buried in thick fur, and felt something loosen in her chest, a knot she had carried so long she forgot its shape. Days passed in small, careful rhythms. Mornings began with Eliana's quiet questions about her father. When sadness came, Bruno sensed it first. He would rise, nose open a toy box Victoria had hastily filled, and carry a stuffed bear or ball to the girl. They played Find It, Bruno hiding treasures under cushions, Eliana giggling as she searched. Victoria watched from the kitchen, coffee cooling in her hand. She had never known this kind of patience. Bruno taught her without words. At night, when Eliana slept, Bruno would pad to Victoria's side. One sleepless evening, she sat on the living room floor, staring at the city lights. Memories came uninvited, her mother's voice singing softly, the hospital bed empty, the years she filled with work to drown the quiet. Bruno approached slowly, placed his head on her knee. The weight was warm, grounding. She rested her hand on his neck, felt the slow pulse beneath the fur. In that stillness, she understood. Bruno had not only guarded the child, he had waited for her too, patient through all her years of running. They visited Noah every afternoon. The hospital room smelled of clean linens and faint antiseptic. Noah lay propped on pillows now, color returning to his face, eyes clearer but still shadowed by fatigue. Bruno entered first each time, tail low and respectful. He carried a toy in his mouth, something Eliana had chosen, and placed it gently on the bed. Noah smiled, weak but real, and reached out. His fingers found Bruno's head first. "Thank you, boy," he said, voice rough from disuse, "for keeping her safe." Eliana climbed onto the bed, careful of the tubes, and told her father stories of the big windows and Bruno's games. Victoria stood by the door, listening. She saw the man's quiet strength, the way he had poured everything into one small life. Through Bruno's steady presence, she began to see the cost of that devotion, the double shifts, the skipped meals, the loneliness of carrying it all alone. She did not speak of it yet. She simply stayed, learning what it meant to be present without fixing everything at once. In these ordinary hours, Victoria felt the slow return of something she had thought lost, the ability to care without fear of loss. Bruno moved between them like a thread, binding the days together. He asked for nothing, yet gave everything. And in his quiet loyalty, Victoria found the courage to believe again, in second chances, in the simple grace of being there. Snow had long melted into memory. Now spring air carried the faint scent of lilacs through the open windows of the city, soft and forgiving, like time itself had decided to rest. Noah Thompson stepped out of the hospital doors that morning, 38 years old, still thin from the long fight, his short beard flecked with early gray. He wore the same faded denim jacket he'd owned for a decade, sleeves rolled up as if ready for work he no longer knew how to refuse. His eyes, once shadowed by endless night shifts, now held a quiet bewilderment, the look of a man who had almost lost everything and was learning, slowly, to accept help. Beside him walked Victoria Reed, 35, elegant in a simple wool coat the color of winter dusk, her posture straight yet softened, the hard lines around her mouth eased by something new, and little Eliana, 4 years old, clutching her father's hand, pink coat flapping, her small face bright with the kind of joy only children can carry without question. Bruno, the German Shepherd, 6 years strong, black and tan coat gleaming in the pale sunlight, walked at heel, tail low but steady, as though he understood the weight of this homecoming better than any of them. They moved into the apartment Victoria offered, clean, quiet rooms high above the street, rent forever forgiven. Noah hesitated at first. Pride had been his armor for so long, but he looked at Eliana's hopeful eyes, then at Bruno's patient gaze, and said yes, with one condition. I'll manage the building, earn my place. His voice was rough, almost a whisper, carrying the echo of every time he'd had to do it alone. Victoria only nodded, no triumph in her face, just the relief of someone who finally understood that giving is sometimes harder than receiving. The days settled into a rhythm. Morning coffee on the balcony, Eliana's laughter mixing with the clink of dishes, Bruno's nails tapping gently across hardwood floors. Noah began to sleep through the night. Victoria learned to leave work at 6, and in the quiet hours, when the city hummed below, they each felt the slow mending of places long broken. Forgiveness, they discovered, did not arrive in grand declarations. It arrived in small silences, when Noah thanked Victoria for the insurance card, when she touched his shoulder without speaking, when Bruno simply lay between them on the rug, breathing slow and sure. The recital hall smelled of polished wood and fresh roses. Lights dimmed. Eliana, in her white tutu, stepped onto the stage, tiny slippers whispering against the floor. She was 5 now, hair in perfect braids, but when the music began, her steps faltered, a small stumble, then another. The notes pulled ahead while she froze, eyes wide with sudden fear. In the 3rd row, Bruno stood, ears pricked. A single, soft bark rolled out, gentle, encouraging, like a grandfather saying, "You've got this, little one." The audience smiled, a ripple of warm laughter. Eliana's shoulders lifted. She found the beat again, finished the dance with arms outstretched, small face glowing. When the curtain fell, she ran straight to the aisle, straight into arms that now felt like home. That night the apartment was quiet. Moonlight fell across the living room in silver stripes. On the wide couch, Victoria sat on one end, Noah on the other, Eliana asleep upstairs. Between them lay Bruno, head resting on crossed paws, tail giving the slowest, softest wag, like a metronome counting grace. The room smelled of cedar and faint vanilla from the candle they'd lit earlier. No one spoke for a long while. Then Victoria reached down, fingers tracing the warm fur behind Bruno's ears. "You didn't just find her that night in the snow," she murmured, voice low and steady. "You found the rest of us, too." Noah looked across at her, eyes soft in the half-light. He said nothing, but the corner of his mouth lifted, just enough. Bruno sighed, a deep, contented sound. They sat like that until the candle burned low. 3 people and 1 dog, bound not by blood, but by something older, truer. The kind of wealth that cannot be counted, only felt. As the snow of that long-ago night fades into memory, remember this: loneliness and illness can visit any heart, especially in the quiet years after 65. You may feel forgotten, your days heavy with silence or pain, but kindness still walks the streets, sometimes on 4 paws, sometimes through a stranger's hand. You are never truly alone. Reach out, share your story below, like, comment, and subscribe, so these tales of hope keep reaching hearts like yours. May the Lord wrap you in His peace, heal your body, and fill your days with gentle love. You matter, always.